Hello there, everybody. I'm Dusk and
And I am Kayawen.
and today we're going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and what we actually think of it.
Yeah, this is going to be a follow-up to a previous video we did, which was basically just us talking back and forth on what we thought of Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole and on each games individually. This will be as I said, this is a follow-up based on the third game, how it stands alone as its own game, and how it does tying in the whole franchise as a final game in the trilogy. I'm assuming it's a trilogy. It was a great ending.
I would certainly hope it's a trilogy, and why don't we make that a lovely transition into my first point? I think this is pretty much both of our points. Like, there isn't really much of a disagreement here.
Yeah.
That this really needs to be a trilogy. It either needs to be a trilogy or a foragy at max.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure foragy is a word, but we're rolling with it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it stays either a trilogy, because I don't really think there's more he could tell going forward. If he wanted to make more prequels, that's a different story. I'm honestly not sure how I would feel about it, though, because we've already learned pretty much all we really need to know about the purple guy. Need to know about the purple guy. We learned that he's a security guard. We learned that he murdered the children.
And we learned of his demise.
Right, in Springtrap. Be forewarned, this will have spoilers for Five Nights at Freddy's 3. We'll put a spoiler warning at the front.
Yeah, there will be.
I just remembered to put that we need a spoiler warning.
There will be a spoiler warning at the front of this video.
Yeah. So
I like how we're saying that now, like that really matters. Like after you've already spoiled it, it's like, oh yeah, don't worry guys, there'll be a spoiler warning at the front.
We'll edit one in later. But my point is, we've already really learned what we need to know about about the purple guy. I don't really think we need to know that it was Joe Schmo's security guard, unless it really was, like the game theorist theorized, the phone guy. I honestly don't think it was phone guy. I think that was a stretch.
I don't see it, yeah.
But honestly, that's the only way I could see it being necessary to go further into who the purple guy is.
I don't think that will be the focus of a future game. I would think the focus of, if there is going to be a fourth game, it would be at the first diner. That would have to be the focus, because what else is there? Unless he's willing to completely invent something new that somehow fits, there's just nothing else. There's nothing else forward he can go.
That's true.
The only thing that he can do is go back to the first diner. And frankly, I think I might be okay with a fourth game that takes place at the first diner, but I would only be okay with it, and only if it actually does a good job of differentiating itself from 3 other games now.
Yeah.
Because looking at each one, Scott managed to find a way to change the mechanics in a reasonable way that was still fun, iffy on the third one, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
But in each game, he managed to differentiate, each game through its mechanics.
Right.
I'm not entirely certain what else he can do if there is a hypothetical. I can words. I can really words. In this hypothetical fourth game, I'm not sure what else he can change to really set it apart from the rest of them.
Yeah. And that is one thing that I liked about the about the Five Nights at Freddy's trilogy, is the mechanics were largely the same, but different to keep it interesting. Like in the first one, it was just checking monitors and doors. In the second one, you had so many more mechanics to worry about and no doors, but you were still in an office checking cameras. And in the third one, there are many new mechanics, and different things that you have to worry about, like the ghost jump scares that don't kill you, but warn Springtrap of where you are. I thought that was very clever, because when I heard... I stayed on top of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 as much as I could. I eagerly anticipated its arrival. And when I heard that there was only going to be one animatronic, I thought it was a really, really dicey move. Moving from, how many was it in the last one? 10?
10.
Yeah, 10 animatronics in the last one.
And frankly, 10 was too many.
10 was a lot. It was a lot to juggle, but at the same time, it kept things interesting.
Almost, from my perspective, I see 10 as too many, because a lot of people talk about how difficult Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was.
Yeah.
And around night 3, there are people who had difficulty getting down night 1.
Yeah.
So around night 3,
It gets really, really
it's
old.
just wearing thin by that point. Whereas in the first game, there are people who went on to night 3 without even dying. And then had a lot of issues with nights 4, 5, and 6.
Case in point, Jacksepticeye.
Yeah.
He's an awesome YouTuber. You should watch him.
That's one that's the one I'm thinking of was, you know, he had issues. He breezed through like the first three nights.
Yeah.
And then it only on nights 4, 5, and 6 did he actually have issues.
Yeah, and that's with the first one.
Yeah,
that's with original FNAF.
This is in FNAF 1. In FNAF 2, I haven't seen his playthrough of FNAF 2 yet, but
I know Mark had trouble with just night 1.
Yeah, Markiplier had a ton of issues with night 1
because there are so many new mechanics to worry about.
And there are a lot of other YouTubers that have shown that they had huge issues with the first night. So I think it was a mistake to put in that many animatronics.
Yeah. And that might be why he toned it back, but I honestly thought that toning it back to 1 was too much. But then I saw the mechanic of, I'm going to call them, for lack of a better term, the ghost jump scares, where the other ghost form animatronics jump scare you when your oxygen is running low. I thought that was very clever. It provided different jump scares that you had to watch for in different places, and without retconning the whole there's only one animatronic thing.
Yeah, to me it's kind of a cop-out.
Okay.
It's kind of a serious cop-out, and the ghost jump scares were incredibly weak. They were basically, they were not only weak, but they also had no real place being there. Because the entire idea of, at least in its current form, the entire idea of you not having enough oxygen doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not justifying the whole ventilation poor, you need oxygen system. That made no sense. I'm talking about the jump scares themselves as they stand, because, and like our previous video, I'm not going to go too much into theory, but if it is true that the hidden mini games are freeing the souls of the children, then it makes sense to have some other connection to those souls being present, because otherwise they would have just come out of nowhere.
I wouldn't exactly say that's going too much into theory, because like it's pretty clear that's what you're doing.
Okay.
Like it's pretty damn clear.
Yeah.
Like at the true end of FNAF 3, I mean you see the lights with the lights in their eyes on and with the lights in their eyes off. That's pretty clear.
Yeah. So yeah, since that is a thing, I think it makes sense for it to tie into the actual gameplay a bit with having the ghost jump scares, calling attention to, yeah, their souls are still trapped. The animatronics may be missing, but their souls are still trapped.
Yeah, true. I guess then my question is, why do they take the form of those animatronics?
I think because to put them in a different form, he would then have to explain the backstory of those and why they're still trying to scare you. Instead, put them in a form that we know, and a form that they've been haunting for how many decades? It's been 30 years since the last game.
40, I thought.
40? Anyway, it's
between 20 and 40.
It's been decades since the last game, or since since FNAF 1.
Excuse me.
No way. And so these animatronics have been collecting dust with the children's souls still seething inside them. They're probably going to start taking on that identity a little bit.
It's possible. That's getting pretty heavy into the theory, though.
That is getting pretty heavy into the theory, but my guess is, A, it was easier to animate. Instead of having to come up with humans that jump scare you, you can just call back to the animatronics you've already rendered a bit and just touch them up to make them look a bit more ghosty. And 2, it calls attention to their souls still being present and haunting the location, without having to completely retcon the whole there's one animatronic, which I actually thought, to go into my next thought real quick, we'll come back to that, but my next thought is I liked that it called attention to Springtrap. I liked that a lot because it told us more about the purple guy subtly. Like, honestly, when I watch playthroughs of the other FNAF games, I'm not too scared of the animatronics themselves. Like, I'm nervous about the jump scares, and I like the tension. Springtrap creeps the shit out of me, and here's why. He was a murderer and an all-around creepy guy before he started haunting a suit. And then you have his body, his physical body, trapped inside that suit, and his soul still hungers for more murder. That creeps the shit out of me.
Animatronic for screaming blood.
Now, that's a personal thing. Others may not feel the same way, but that's why I liked Springtrap as a character. Because if I look at all these, if I look at these animatronics as characters in a narrative, I like the idea. I don't find it that creepy, though. I mean, I do to an extent, but not nearly as much as I find Springtrap creepy.
True. I guess it's also a case of how the other animatronics were rendered. Because if you look at the other animatronics, I mean, they're creepy when you think about it, but they're not creepy in the same visceral way because you can see parts of the purple guy's body inside Springtrap.
Yeah.
That is a grotesque, but it also evokes creepy feelings as well.
Yeah, because you see body, and the mind just has this natural thing that if body is not in proper shape, invoke creep response A now.
Well, it's actually one of the things that makes things like zombies so creepy, is because the human mind knows when things are how things are supposed to look on a human.
Right.
And when things don't look right, it can trigger that twinge reaction of ugh.
Wonderful sound effect, by the way.
Thank you.
That. I wish we had a webcam going because that was impressive.
Thank you. But we are getting way off topic.
We are getting way
now.
off topic. Bringing it back to A, there being only one animatronic. I liked that focus. And B, having other jump scares so it wasn't just one, but still making it work with just one animatronic.
I would have liked to have seen one animatronic that had a variety of jump scares, that had many different ways of getting at you.
And technically Springtrap did,
he had like 3.
But he didn't really have that many animations to go along with it. I think it was like 5 total animations.
I thought it was like 2. I thought there was like the one where he walks in you from the door, and the one where he comes from the vent from the side.
Yeah, so
that's basically
so there's
it.
Like 2.
If you think about it, in like FNAF 2, every single animatronic had its own animation.
Yeah.
And sure, there was the ghost animatronics, but they really weren't that bad. Like, once you knew how to avoid them, it was cake.
Yeah.
Like, really the only difficult one to avoid was, like, Foxy.
Yeah. Foxy was pretty difficult to avoid.
That's really the only one that's difficult.
And that is a good point. One of the core mechanics is to avoid getting the ghost jump scares because that's what draws Springtrap to you. So if you avoid the other jump scares, all you're left with is Springtrap.
Yeah.
Although the one that, oh god, the ghost that really got me was the puppet with that loud creak in your ear and him right in your face and his eyes shifting all over you.
He's searching your soul.
That's what it felt like.
All right. So with this wonderful segue, my next thought is the exact mechanics of FNAF 3 and how completely unexplained they are.
They really are.
If you look at the first 2 games and you analyze how you're supposed to interact with the animatronics, wow, I am so good with words today. By the second or third night, you should be pretty close to figuring out how things work.
Right.
In terms of how to avoid getting jump scared and how to deal with the animatronics.
Right.
Even if you might not be able to execute it perfectly, you still know how to do it.
Right.
But in the third game, there are a bunch of people who are like, I have no idea how I finished this game. I don't even know if half the things I were doing were actually doing anything, but I did them anyway because they felt good.
That's a very jumbled sentence, but I like it.
I didn't even see how that was a jumbled sentence, but whatever. So, for example, the mechanic of the sound being played does that. I've seen some people that say it's the way what that does is it brings out Springtrap if he's hiding in that room because he's hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some theories that it brings him to that room,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen some theories that it repels him from that room. So, considering that there's no consensus on it yet, and the game's been out for like what, 4 weeks at this point, 6
At
weeks,
least 4 to 6 weeks,
somewhere in there, with no real consensus being out there right now, that's not good. When the main mechanic, getting rid of the animatronic, isn't clearly explained, I find that a serious fault.
Yeah, that is a pretty serious problem. And even when I was watching playthroughs of it, I wasn't quite sure how it worked myself. Because that's one thing I try to do when I watch playthroughs, is I look at it as if I'm going to play this in the future, which is one reason I watch playthroughs, is because I want to play those games. I watch it to see how the different mechanics work and how the really tricky ones work. So I'm not fumbling myself to try to do it. Some may say that's half the fun, but I like to go in knowing how the mechanics work.
Yeah.
And that was one that took me a really long time to figure out. I'm 99.9% sure it works like if he's in one room and you play it in the room next to him, he'll go to that room. So you can keep juggling him between 2 or 3 rooms away from you. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, because that's how the playthrough I watched did it, and it seemed to work.
Okay.
But I've honestly not heard of the other theories. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I've been on the FNAF subreddit.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few theories on how it actually works.
Yeah. But that is Reddit at the same time.
It is Reddit, but it also the people that are just completely plain wrong typically end up downvoted anyway.
That's very true. That's very
so
true.
Reddit
is usually good at policing itself.
For the most part.
For the most part.
Unless they get the wonderful circle jerk going, and then it's just issues all around.
Yeah. But anyway, we're not talking about Reddit. We're talking about FNAF 3. And that was one of the mechanics I had issue with. The other one was the mechanic of the vents. It's never explained. You have to literally figure it out for yourself.
In what way?
You're never told he can go in the vents until he does.
I mean, it's kind of assumed.
It's assumed, but at the same time, imagine you've never played a FNAF game before and you see that there's an overlay of a vent map and the regular map. And then you're told that your ventilation can go down. Honestly, I would assume that meant there was some sort of blockage, like dust or something, and you have to look for the blockage and expel it. I would not be expecting the animatronic to crawl inside.
Honestly, though, I would be expecting that fully. Like, just from my history with games, I would expect the enemy to be coming through the vents.
That's true. That's very true.
Because that's kind of a giant trope, is to have the enemy crawling through the vents.
That's very true. That's a trope in pretty much any form of visual or pretty much visual media.
Heck, even in books, it's a thing.
Yeah. So not just visual media.
Yeah.
Yeah, vents are a trope. So yeah, you've definitely got a point there, but when you take for granted that somebody knows that's a poor design.
Not necessarily.
You shouldn't necessarily go into it in the same depth that you do the other mechanics. Like, let me think of an example.
My point is, there are, like, at the third point of a series, you need to be counting on the fact that there are experienced fans who are going to be who are going to be among the crowd of people who are going to play your game.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have played FNAF have played other games, a lot of other games. They're your typical gamer crowd.
That's true.
And one of the things with designing video games is that you need to keep in mind your learned bias and the learned bias of your target audience.
Yeah.
If your target audience is the multi gamer at large, I would say, or basically just the person who's played a lot of different games.
Yeah.
then they're going to be pretty familiar with a lot of things. For example, if you're a console gamer, say for example, one I've experienced with the Xbox 360, it's pretty assumed that your movement is going to be on the left stick and your looking is going to be on the right stick.
That's true.
That's pretty much assumed. There are options to change that, but that is what you assume the moment you pick up a game, as long as it's things like a first-person shooter or like a third-person action game.
Yeah.
If there's a combination of looking and moving, it's probably going to be movement on left stick, looking on right stick.
That's true.
That is a learned bias.
Okay.
So being aware of your learned bias as a developer, as well as recognizing the learned bias of your target audience, means that you can cut corners in having to explain things.
That's true.
And if he had gone into more detail about the audio mechanic, I could more forgive not going into the vents.
Okay.
But I can see it being a bit of an issue if you're more new to games.
Yeah.
But exactly how many new people who are new to games are picking up horror games as their first introduction?
That's very true.
Considering the only
Especially
platform,
the third part of a trilogy.
Considering the only platform was released on is Steam,
Yeah.
which is a giant. I don't want to say gamer's gate because that brings up a whole list of issues.
A giant pool of gamers.
A
giant pool of veteran gamers.
It's a portal. A games portal. The largest games portal on the net right now.
Yeah.
So
Origin, you try, but no.
Yeah, no. That's a whole nother video topic in and of itself. God. Yeah, Steam is... with the only distribution being on Steam, that's a group of people who are more than likely veteran gamers.
Yeah.
So you gotta keep in mind what they've already learned, because
Yeah.
re-explaining everything just doesn't work.
That's very true. That's very true. Let's see. I only had a few grievances with this game.
I actually did as well.
I mostly enjoyed this game and thought it was very, very well done. I actually did notice that one of the points you brought up in our last editorial, the death minigames,
yes,
he actually changed and fixed. My guess is he either thought of it himself or had somebody tell him. To call back, Dusk's point was, if one of your core storytelling mechanics only happens when you die, that is flawed, because if somebody does really, really well at the game and doesn't die that often, they're not going to see a very important chunk of your storytelling.
And also considering, like, actually might have been why he made Five Nights at Freddy's 2 so difficult, is because he wanted people to see those death minigames.
That's very true.
But frankly, that's bad design.
Yeah. But he changed that in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, with the minigames instead taking place after every level. I thought that was a very good fix.
Me as well. That is exactly the fix I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the only other grievance I had with the game is, I had it in my head a second ago. If you have another point, continue.
Okay. My only other grievance, really big grievance, is the minigames for the quote-unquote soul releases. They are so hard to find.
Agreed.
Now, I can understand why he did it if what he was going for was something similar to the Zelda games. Because are you familiar with Zelda at all? I can't remember.
Not really, no.
Okay. I'm only sort of familiar with Zelda, but I have a lot of friends that play Zelda, like, to crazy levels. I know somebody who owns an ocarina and knows how to play it and knows how to play Link's music. That's the sort of friends I keep. And they're awesome. But my point is, there are some parts in Zelda games that are so complicated that you would think, how would one person be able to find any of this? Like the Scarab gun from Halo.
Oh, yeah.
How would somebody discover that? Except if you're trying to go for a sense of community, bring people together to talk about the game and basically get free marketing, and talking about the game and bringing people together through games.
If the main ending to your story requires a group of people to crack it, you're doing it wrong. I'm just gonna flat out say it. If it requires a community to figure out how to actually get one of the endings of your game in a game series that that previously just simply completing the game would allow you to get the ending, you're doing it wrong.
That's very true, because the Zelda complicatedness, for lack of a much better word,
It's expected.
is not only expected, it's expected because it was there from game one. Like, I remember watching something about the creation of the first Zelda game, and they mentioned how playtesters said, this is too hard, you need to do something different. And instead of making it easier, he made it more complicated, because then people had to talk to each other and cause this sense of community. And for a place like Japan, where it was made, people are pretty dang close to each other.
That's true. And there's a lot of gaming cafes and
Right.
groups where you can, like, in the places where you would go and play games in
Right.
a communal sense.
Right.
So you'll have the opportunity there.
Right.
Unlike in America, where, like, gaming cafes, I think there's, like, one in our entire region.
Yeah, and I don't even know about it. I mean, I know a few of the sports bars around here will stream the LCS.
That's the League Championship Series, for those who don't know. It's the North American professional series for League of Legends.
But other than that, I don't really know of any true gaming cafes that are meant for games.
I know of one.
I want to go to there.
I think it's in Boston, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
But
Because Boston's bad.
no, Boston is not bad. It's just a pain.
Painful.
It's a pain in the ass to navigate for people who aren't from Boston.
We are getting so far off
Yes,
topic,
we are.
though.
I don't know
So
how we
far off
did.
topic.
Okay. But about the complicatedness, I if that's what he was going for, I can understand why he did it, but I think it was misguided.
Brain. I agree.
Now, I liked the concept of the release Soul minigames themselves is a great idea,
Definitely.
because it's an already established mechanic from the second game that further continues the story. I love that. More of that, please.
Yeah.
The fact that they were that
Except don't make a fourth game. More of that, please. Just don't make a fourth one.
make a different game with more of that concept. But making them that complicated, because not only finding them is very complicated, making them work is very complicated. And if you don't make them work, you have to restart the night and do it again.
Well, for the most part, though, weren't those games accessible at the start of the night?
Yes, they were.
Okay, that's not terrible then, that you have to restart the night.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
If it was only accessible at, like, at 5 a.m. on the fourth night, you have to click in the 16th pixel on the north, and only when Pisces is above Aster thing. Yeah, I'm not good at symbology.
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 Symbolism.
Segueing into my next point, if you were finished up with yours.
I'm finished with mine.
Okay. So my final point isn't actually even a criticism, it's actually a thumbs up, is that
Oh my god, he likes something about it.
he made it less subtle.
That's very true.
The symbolism in the game is way less subtle than the other two,
That's very true.
which is so much better, because I felt more satisfied watching a playthrough of the game without having to look up what it really meant. Because my first thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's 1 were like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, I guess it's alright. And then I looked at, view counters on videos, and it's like, holy Jesus, this has, 6 million views. How?
Yeah.
So, and then I realized, oh, there's actually a community around this, and, a group of rabid fans. And I couldn't figure out why, and I had to figure it out. Whereas if the third one had been the first game, I could see a community being built around this, because it looked really, because it felt like it had more story to it than any of the other games combined in the pure gameplay and what's showed directly on screen.
Right. And I think a big part of that was the end level minigame that actually gave a concrete ending. Like, it
Yes.
showed point blank, purple guy went into Springtrap killed him, he now haunts Springtrap.
It's assumed that he's on Springtrap, but it's from the promotional images and from the things that happen in the game and the mini games. It's it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I definitely liked about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I like a little bit of subtlety. I don't like everything handed to me on a silver platter. But every so often, you need to take a step back and say, am I being too subtle?
Which the first 2 games were.
The first one especially. And we covered that in our first one. But
yeah, that was like a 40... The first video we did, that was like a 20 or 30-minute conversation, so...
About just how the first game was way too subtle.
Yeah, so feel free to take a listen to that one as well.
But that's what I really, really liked about the third one. It had its subtlety, but it wasn't too subtle to the point of losing something or compromising gameplay.
That it definitely did right. It combined the subtlety that it needs, being the story that it is,
Mm-hmm.
with the medium that it is, and it is a game.
Right.
So with it actually blended those two the best out of all of them.
Right.
I have a feeling if Scott could, he might go back and remake the first 2, adding in more information. I can almost see him re-releasing the first 2 games with like maybe not re-releasing, but doing major improvements to the first 2 games.
Yeah. I'm just not really sure what he could do to the first one to fix it, because the story that's told in the first one through the posters, I'm not sure how we could work that in.
I like our idea from the first game, or from the first one, where basically it would be a little thing that you read on your way in. At the start of every night, you'd read notes from previous night guards.
That's right. Yeah, or instead of just phone guy, you hear recordings of previous night guards.
The problem is, though, like, the third game was played with this problem.
Yeah.
It's in the later parts of the game, during like nights 3 to 5, and even 6. I don't think the 6th night has more information. I think the 6th night's just difficulty mode. So in nights like 3 to 5, you need all of that time during the start to not you can't listen to
That's true.
to phone guy in any of them.
Yeah.
Or anything past like night 2, because if you do, then you're just gonna lose.
Yeah. And that was an issue, and I think that's why he kept the information parts of Phone Guy down to just nights 1 and 2, because he knew after that it would just be too crazy. So yeah, I think maybe if he did something a little different with FNAF 1 and how it delivered its narrative, it could be more interesting. I'm just not sure what he could change about the mechanics, because honestly, say what you will about FNAF 1, it gave a firm grounding for the franchise.
True.
Everything was grounded around the idea of you're in an office, you watch monitors.
Well, the concept isn't what I'm balking at here. It's the storytelling, the way the story is presented.
Okay.
That's what I think would need to be touched up on.
Okay. And yeah, maybe if you went back to maybe the first Freddy Fazbear's, like after Fredbear's Family Diner, but before FNAF 2, there was another Freddy Fazbear's Diner. And that's where the first 5 murders took place.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because there was the Fredbear's Family Diner, which was the first one, was where the puppet was probably killed. Yeah, that's where it's assumed, due to some of the death mini games in FNAF 2.
Yeah,
and then there's the second game, or the second diner, or technically
after Fredbear's Family, based on what we've heard, after Fredbear's Family Diner was shut down because of something that happened there, they were acquired by Fazbear Entertainment, and the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was opened.
Yeah.
With the 4 animatronics.
And that's where the 4 murders happened.
4 murders, yep. And then you cut to Five Nights 2, and another murder takes place, and that's where the 5th child comes in. I'm pretty sure. If we're following this correctly, that's how it goes down. And I think my point is if he goes back to either the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza or the Fredbear's Family Diner and make another prequel, it could be interesting. He would have to do something to keep it really fresh, because the idea of sitting on your ass watching monitors is going to get old.
That's why I really like the idea of needing to go and restart generators. I really like that idea.
That could be interesting, especially if you're at Fredbear's Family Diner, which it sounds like would have been a very, very small establishment. If that sort of thing happened, that could keep it really interesting. Like, keep the idea of Five Nights at Freddy's, but change up the mechanics and change up the tone a little bit, because just jump scares isn't going to cut it.
True, and the one thing that I would almost say the third game was lacking is atmosphere.
Yeah, honestly, I felt a lot of atmosphere in the first game, and kind of in the second game. Mostly the first game. The first game had beautiful sound work.
It did.
It sort of followed through with the jump scares. Like, it was okay.
They were pretty good.
But honestly, the atmosphere in the first one was so great, with the music sometimes off in the distance, or Freddy laughing, or the sound work was just fantastic.
And what made the jump scares good was the tension that was built by the atmosphere previously.
Right.
Versus in the second and third game, where everything comes so fast,
right,
that there's not only is there no time for tension, and by the end of it you're like, screw this game.
Exactly.
But you just don't have time. You just don't have time to build the tension.
Exactly. And game 2, I don't want to say it made sense, but I can understand why the tension wasn't there, because you were having things fired at you so quickly. In the third game, it should have been all about the atmosphere, because you're facing down the child killer that these games are based around.
That's true.
It should have had the atmosphere to back it, not just the jump scares. And right. I think the problem is he's gotten too comfortable with jump scares.
Yeah. He needs to branch out. He needs to go back to his roots from FNAF 1 and go back to the atmosphere.
Right. Now, we did bash Five Nights 1 pretty heavily in our first review because of basically how unsubtle it was. Or not unsubtle, I'm sorry. Based on how too subtle it was and how the mechanics were very bare bones. But at the same time, I feel like it deserves at least some praise for the design of how... Basically what I said about how much it built tension, because he was trying to come back at the time from making a game that was bashed horribly by reviewers and critics.
And for those of you who haven't ever had to put something that you've made out for critique in a really serious manner, it's hard. It's really hard. I've done some fan work for writing before. And when it gets bashed, it's hurtful. Like, there's something to be said for not caring about what strangers say on the internet, but
and haters gonna hate. But at the same
haters
time,
gonna hate. But you're human. Anyone who says that, I don't care at all, yes, quite imperfect, they're lying. Okay, like there's only so much that you can tune out before you start to wonder.
Yeah,
and it's offset if you have a lot of people telling you that it's good. But the more people you have telling you that it's so bad, it can get really, really hard.
And I could really tell after I heard that he made one game before that was actually quite family friendly and actually a bit more of a kids game that got bashed horribly.
For the whole family.
I can see that he put a lot of his heart and soul into this one. And I think part of the problem with 2 and especially 3 is after he got the fan base that he did from 1, he was pressured to put out products more quickly. Like, I saw comments that were saying, like, why hasn't it already been put out now? I want my game, blah, 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 blah.
That's for every game, though.
True, but when you're a indie developer and you're working by yourself,
I guess
I know I
not
personally
necessarily indie, but mostly one-man development teams.
Yeah, a one-man development team. Like, if that were me, I would feel obligated to put out a product for my fans. Now, whether I would take the time to make sure my game was perfect and risk some people saying, screw this, you're taking too long, I don't know.
I do apologize for my chair creaking in the background. It's a creaky-ass chair.
I don't think they're going to care. But yeah, I think that was the issue with 2 and especially 3 is he was rushed to put out those products. He wasn't so much rushed to put out Five Nights at Freddy's because nobody was expecting it.
Wasn't kind of his excuse for some of the issues in FNAF 1 that he was rushed to put it out?
Yeah. And it does show in some parts, but at the same time, it shows that he took his time in other places, like the sound design. But it showed that he put it out faster in the design of the map and in I think the core mechanics, because he said that he wanted to have more animatronics, but he wasn't able to due to time. And I think that's why, off topic, just for one quickie second, and I think that's why the puppet is so key. He made sure there was some link to it in FNAF 1 with the random posters that will occasionally change to a crying child, but I think he wanted to have the puppet in FNAF 1. We're off tangent line. Back to point. I do think it shows a little bit that, or in some places more than a little bit, that he was rushed to put out FNAF 1. But I think because he hadn't put out, because it wasn't the second or third part of a franchise where people were expecting to see something, he was able to put more heart and soul into other parts. Like, I think he wanted to cater to the FNAF fans for 2 and 3, and he made sure he put in some damn good jump scares for the second one.
True. I don't know, though. I feel like you would want to do a better job than you did in the first place to basically make sure that your fans are like, yeah, he's improving, instead of just like he's just phoning in at this point.
Okay.
So I don't know. I feel like it would have made more sense to put more effort in every time, but I don't know.
And I do too, but at the same time, I'm not a one-man developer.
True.
If I were a one-woman developer team, that'd be a really, really hard thing to do. I'm not even sure I could handle that pressure. I do not envy people who are developing games on their own.
I don't know though. You look at what small development teams can do. I mean, this is we're riding the train to Tangentville right now. But
let's make it a quickie tangent.
Well, yeah, because we
probably should wrap it up.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need to wrap this up quickly because my voice is killing me. Because I'm already out of water. If you look at development teams for games like City Skylines, that was a 12-man development team.
They did a pretty damn good job.
They made 600 different models for buildings, and made, frankly, a better game than larger studios with more budgets could have made. I'm not going to name names, but I'm looking at you, certain video game developer named Everyone's Anti-Hero. So yeah, basically, you can get a lot done as a small development team, and sometimes the vision that the small development team has of what they want their game to be is much more crisp and clear, because you're only explaining it to 13 people, not 1,300. That's
very true. And there's definitely something to be said for keeping the vision at the forefront instead of having a large budget.
And I think that at that point, we should pretty much just wrap this up.
With the final thought that no matter what we say, Scott's only one guy, and he can't do everything.
He can't do everything, though, but that doesn't mean his game is free of criticism because he's only one guy.
Right. Anything that is put out should be put under, not necessarily a microscope, but
Yes, microscope. All the things the microscope.
But,
I'm a very harsh, critical person, in case you couldn't tell.
But anything that somebody puts out should have at least a little bit of critique, especially if they're trying to do better. Without critique, you can't improve.
And with that said, I'm Dusk Inferno.
And I'm Kayawen.
If you like this audio experience, because it's not technically a video, you can check out other... There'll be some links at the end of the video for more things that we've done. Those are more funny things that we just enjoy doing. This is more... This had way more thought put into it.
Right. We had these rattling around in our brains for a while. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye for now.